There's a moment that defines a marriage. A moment when everything that you thought you knew about your relationship shatters completely. A moment when you realize that the person you promised to spend your life with doesn't actually see you at all. Her name is Emma. She is 28 years old. She has been married for 3 years to a man named David. David is 29 years old. David is handsome and successful and charming in public. But in private, David is cruel. Emma married David because she thought she loved him. Emma married David because he promised her a beautiful life. Emma married David because she believed his lies. 3 years later, Emma is sitting in David's car driving down an empty highway at night. Emma is crying because David is angry. David is always angry about something. About Emma's appearance, about her family, about her career, about the way she breathes. Tonight, David is angry because Emma questioned his decision to spend money on a new sports car instead of saving for their future. Emma dared to suggest that maybe they should be more financially responsible. David's rage was immediate and terrifying. David called Emma names. David told Emma that she was worthless. David told Emma that he had married her out of pity because nobody else would ever want her. Emma tried to apologize. Emma always apologized, even when she hadn't done anything wrong. Emma was used to being blamed for David's emotions. But this time, David did something different. David pulled the car over to the side of the road. David told Emma to get out of the car. Emma asked why. David said, "Get out. I'm leaving you here. I don't want to look at you anymore." Emma thought David was joking. Emma thought this was another one of his cruelties designed to scare her. Emma didn't move. David grabbed Emma and physically pushed her out of the car. Emma fell onto the shoulder of the highway. David threw her purse after her. David told her, "You can walk home. Or you can sit here and rot. I don't care." And David drove away. David left his wife alone on the side of the road at night with nothing but the clothes on her back and her purse. Emma sat on that shoulder in shock. Emma was shaking. Emma was hyperventilating. Emma couldn't believe what had just happened. And then a car pulled over. A luxury car with tinted windows. A man got out. His name is James. He is 35 years old. He is a billionaire. But Emma doesn't know that yet. James just sees a woman alone on the side of the road, crying, shaking, in distress. James asks Emma if she's okay. Emma can barely speak. James asks Emma if she needs help. Emma starts crying harder. James doesn't leave. James doesn't judge. James just helps Emma into his car and drives her to safety. But what James doesn't realize, what Emma doesn't realize, is that this moment, this single act of kindness from a stranger, will set off a chain of events that will transform both of their lives forever. Because here's what nobody talks about. Sometimes you don't realize what you've lost until someone else shows you what you should have had. Sometimes you don't understand the value of the person you've been taking for granted until someone else treats them the way they should have been treated all along. And for David, watching Emma with James, watching a billionaire show more care and concern for his wife than David ever had, watching Emma smile again in a way she hadn't smiled in years, David will finally understand what he had, what he threw away, and what he can never get back. This is the story of a woman who was invisible to the man who promised to cherish her. This is the story of a woman who became visible again when a stranger showed her kindness. This is the story of a marriage breaking, a woman healing, and a man finally understanding, too late, what love actually means. But it's also a story about redemption. It's a story about whether people can change. It's a story about whether David can win back his wife before it's too late. Rate this story from 0 to 10. Tell me if you think Emma should give David another chance. Tell me if you think James is the right choice. Tell me if you believe that sometimes love means letting someone go. But most importantly, tell me this. If the person you loved was invisible to the one they chose, would you show them their own value? Would you step aside? Or would you fight for them? Let's find out what happened to Emma, David, and James after that night on the highway. Emma had been slowly disappearing for 3 years. Emma married David when she was 25 years old. Emma thought she was marrying a man who loved her. Emma thought she was marrying her future. But within weeks of the wedding, Emma began to realize something was wrong. Within weeks, Emma discovered that David's public charm didn't exist in private. Within weeks, Emma understood that she had made a terrible mistake. David was controlling. David monitored what Emma wore. David monitored who Emma spoke to. David monitored how Emma spent her time. David told Emma that she wasn't allowed to go out with her friends without his permission. David told Emma that her family was toxic and she should cut them off. Emma did what David wanted. Emma isolated herself from her friends. Emma distanced herself from her family. Emma became dependent on David for everything. Financially, emotionally, socially. And in becoming dependent on David, Emma became invisible. David didn't see Emma as a person. David saw Emma as an accessory. David saw Emma as a possession. David saw Emma as someone to blame when his moods were bad, when his work was stressful, when his life wasn't going exactly the way he wanted it to go. Emma tried to make David happy. Emma cooked the meals he wanted. Emma kept the house the way he wanted. Emma wore the clothes he wanted. Emma became the woman David wanted her to be. But no matter what Emma did, it was never enough. No matter how hard Emma tried, David was never satisfied. No matter how small Emma made herself, David always found something to be angry about. Emma's self-esteem slowly evaporated. Emma stopped believing in herself. Emma stopped thinking that her opinions mattered. Emma stopped thinking that she deserved to be treated with respect. Emma's mother called one day and asked how she was doing. Emma almost broke down on the phone. Emma almost told her mother the truth, that her marriage was a nightmare, that her husband was cruel, that she was terrified. But Emma was ashamed. Emma thought that if she admitted what was happening, her mother would judge her for staying. Emma thought that if she told anyone the truth, they would think she was stupid for marrying David. Emma thought that she had made her bed and now she had to lie in it. So Emma lied. Emma told her mother that everything was fine. Emma told her mother that she was happy. Emma told her mother that David was wonderful. Emma was becoming a ghost. Emma was becoming the kind of woman who didn't exist anymore. Emma was becoming invisible. And then came the night on the highway. That night started like any other night in Emma's marriage. David came home from work in a mood. Emma could tell by the way he walked, by the tone of his voice, by the anger that radiated off him that something had gone wrong at work. Emma had learned over 3 years that when David came home like this, she needed to be careful. Emma had learned that David was looking for a reason to explode. Emma had learned that David would find something to blame her for, and when he did, he would make her pay. David asked Emma what was for dinner. Emma had prepared his favorite meal, salmon with roasted vegetables. Emma had spent hours cooking, trying to make everything perfect. David looked at the meal and he said, "I don't want this. This is disgusting. Did you really think I would eat this?" Emma felt her stomach drop. Emma asked David what he wanted instead. David said, "I don't know. Something that doesn't taste like you're trying to poison me." Emma went to the kitchen and made something else. Emma made pasta. Emma made David's second favorite meal. Emma was desperate to make him happy, to make him not angry. David ate the pasta without saying anything. David then told Emma that she was spending too much money on groceries. David said that Emma was being irresponsible with money. David said that Emma was the reason they weren't saving enough money for the future. Emma tried to explain that she had been following the budget that David had set. Emma tried to explain that she had been careful with spending. Emma tried to explain that she wasn't the one making irresponsible financial decisions. But David didn't want to hear it. David became angrier. David said that Emma was arguing with him. David said that Emma never listened. David said that Emma was selfish and ungrateful. Emma apologized. Emma always apologized. Emma said she was sorry. Emma said she would do better. Emma said she would cut back on expenses. But David wasn't satisfied. David was still angry. David needed something more to direct his rage at. And then David saw the credit card statement on the kitchen counter. Emma had spent money on a new winter coat. The coat wasn't expensive by any normal standard. It was on sale for $70. But David saw that Emma had spent money that he hadn't explicitly approved. David picked up the credit card statement and he stared at it. And Emma could see his anger reaching a critical point. Emma knew that something terrible was about to happen. David said, "What is this? You spent money without asking me." Emma tried to explain. "David, it's just a coat. It was on sale. My old one had a hole in it." David interrupted her. "You don't get to spend money without my permission. You don't get to make decisions without me. You are nothing without me. Do you understand?" "Nothing." Emma felt tears starting. Emma tried to stay calm. Emma said, "I'm sorry. I should have asked you. I will return it." But David was beyond reason. David told Emma to get in the car. David said they were going for a drive. Emma didn't understand why, but she complied. Emma always complied. They drove in silence. David was white-knuckling the steering wheel. David was muttering under his breath. David was so angry that Emma was terrified about what was going to happen. After 20 minutes, David pulled off the highway onto a dark shoulder. The road was empty. It was nighttime. There were no houses, no lights, nothing but darkness. David told Emma to get out of the car. Emma asked why. David said, "Get out. I can't stand to look at you anymore. You disgust me." Emma thought he was being dramatic. Emma thought he would change his mind. Emma didn't move. David reached over and he grabbed Emma's arm. David opened the passenger door. David physically pulled Emma out of the car and pushed her onto the shoulder of the highway. Emma fell. Emma scraped her hands and her knees on the pavement. Emma was shocked. Emma was terrified. David threw Emma's purse out of the car after her. David told her, "You can walk home. Or you can sit here and freeze. I don't care anymore. You're nothing. You're worthless. Nobody would ever want you. I only married you because I felt sorry for you." And then David drove away. David left his wife alone on the side of the road in the dark. Emma sat on that shoulder, shaking, crying, unable to process what had just happened. Emma couldn't believe that David had actually done this. Emma couldn't believe that the man she had married, the man she had promised to love forever, had abandoned her on the side of the road like trash. Emma was alone. Emma was terrified. Emma didn't know what to do. And then a car pulled over. James was driving home from a business dinner when he saw Emma sitting on the side of the road. At first, James thought he was seeing things. At first, James thought it was a pile of trash or debris. But as James got closer, James realized it was a person. James realized it was a woman, crying, sitting on the shoulder of the highway in the dark. James immediately pulled over. James got out of his car. James approached Emma carefully, not wanting to scare her. "Are you okay?" James asked. "What happened? Are you hurt?" Emma could barely speak. Emma was shaking too much. Emma was crying too hard. James helped Emma up gently. James asked her name. Emma whispered, "Emma." James asked, "Emma, do you need help? Are you in danger?" Emma nodded. Emma tried to speak but couldn't. Emma was completely traumatized. James didn't ask questions. James didn't judge. James simply helped Emma into his car. James turned up the heat. James gave Emma a blanket from his back seat. James told her, "You're safe now. I'm going to help you." James drove away from that highway. James drove Emma to a nearby hotel. James checked her into a room. James paid for everything. And as James was leaving, Emma finally found her voice. "Why are you helping me?" Emma asked. "You don't know me." James said, "Because you needed help. That's enough." Emma spent that night in a hotel room, safe, warm, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt like someone actually cared about her well-being. The next morning, James came to check on her. James brought her food. James asked Emma if she was okay. And Emma told James everything. Emma told him about her marriage. Emma told him about David's cruelty. Emma told him about the 3 years of being invisible. Emma told him about being abandoned on the highway. James listened without judgment. James listened with compassion. James said, "Emma, you didn't deserve to be treated that way. No one deserves to be treated that way." And in hearing those words, Emma realized something profound. She had been invisible to David for so long that she had become invisible to herself. She had internalized David's cruelty. She had started to believe that she deserved to be treated badly. But James saw her. James saw Emma as a person. James saw Emma as someone who deserved kindness and respect. Emma stayed at the hotel for a week. James visited her every day. James brought her meals. James listened to her. James helped her start to understand that what had happened to her was not her fault. After a week, Emma made a decision. Emma decided that she was not going to go back to David. Emma decided that she was going to start a new life. Emma decided that she was going to become visible again. James helped Emma. James found her an apartment. James helped her get a job. James stood beside her as she began to rebuild her life. And slowly, Emma began to transform. Emma began to smile again. Emma began to laugh again. Emma began to remember who she was before she married David. And James began to fall in love with her. David spent the first week after abandoning Emma in a strange state of being. David thought that Emma would come crawling back. David thought that Emma was too dependent on him to survive on her own. David thought that Emma would call him, begging him to take her back. But Emma didn't call. Emma didn't come back. David tried to tell himself that he didn't care. David told himself that Emma was worthless anyway. David told himself that he was better off without her. But David couldn't stop thinking about her. David couldn't get the image of Emma falling onto the pavement out of his mind. David couldn't stop remembering the look of shock and terror on her face as he drove away. A week after abandoning Emma, David drove to their house and found it empty. Emma had left. Emma had taken her clothes and her important documents and she had disappeared. David called Emma's phone. Emma didn't answer. David texted Emma. Emma didn't respond. David showed up at Emma's parents' house. Emma's parents told David that Emma didn't want to see him. Emma's mother told David that she knew about his abuse. Emma's mother told David that she would call the police if he came near Emma again. David was shocked. David couldn't believe that Emma had told her parents. David couldn't believe that Emma had not come back to him. David couldn't believe that Emma was actually gone. And then David saw Emma. David saw Emma from a distance one day. Emma was walking down the street with a man. The man was tall and handsome and clearly very wealthy. The man was holding Emma's hand. The man was looking at Emma like she was the most precious thing in the world. Emma was smiling. Emma was actually smiling. Emma was laughing. Emma was more beautiful than David had ever seen her. And David understood in that moment that he had lost her. David understood that he had taken Emma for granted. David understood that he had never truly seen his wife, and now his wife was with someone else. David watched as James kissed Emma's forehead. David watched as Emma nestled against James. David watched as the two of them walked together down the street, completely absorbed in each other. And David felt something break inside him. David felt the weight of what he had done. David felt the reality of losing Emma. For the first time in his adult life, David understood what he had thrown away. For the first time, David understood that Emma was valuable. For the first time, David understood that love wasn't about control or possession. Love was about seeing someone, about valuing them, about letting them be themselves. But it was too late. Emma was gone. Emma had moved on. Emma was with James. 6 months after that night on the highway, 6 months after David abandoned Emma on a dark road, Emma and James were living together in a small house with a garden and quiet streets and everything that Emma had never known she wanted. Emma had gone to therapy. Emma was sitting in a comfortable chair once a week, talking to a therapist named Dr. Sarah, who listened without judgment and who helped Emma understand something fundamental. Emma wasn't broken because of what David did to her. Emma was broken because she had believed David when he told her she was worthless. Emma was processing what had happened to her. Emma was untangling the 3 years of psychological abuse. Emma was learning to recognize the patterns, the way David had isolated her, the way David had controlled her, the way David had made her believe that she deserved cruelty. Dr. Sarah asked Emma one day, "Do you think you deserve to be treated that way?" Emma's immediate response was, "No, of course not." But then Emma paused. Emma said, "But I don't understand why I accepted it for so long. Why didn't I leave sooner? Why did I stay?" Dr. Sarah said, "Because you didn't see yourself the way other people see you. You believed David's version of you. You believed you were worthless. When you believe you're worthless, you accept being treated worthlessly." And Emma cried. Emma understood in that moment that her greatest enemy wasn't David. Her greatest enemy was herself, the version of herself that had believed David's lies. Emma was learning to trust again. Emma was learning that not every man would be cruel to her. Emma was learning that kindness wasn't a trap. Emma was learning that she deserved to be treated with respect. James never pressured Emma. James never asked her to move faster, to heal faster, to feel things on his timeline. James gave her space. James gave her time. James supported her journey without needing to be acknowledged or thanked for it. One day, Emma had a panic attack. Emma suddenly couldn't breathe. Emma was convinced that something terrible was going to happen. Emma was spiraling into fear. James didn't tell her to calm down. James didn't tell her that she was being irrational. James just held her. James breathed with her. James said, "I'm here. You're safe. I'm not going anywhere." And in that moment, Emma felt something shift. Emma felt what it was like to be held by someone who wasn't trying to control her. Emma felt what it was like to have someone present with her in her pain instead of dismissing it or using it against her. Emma fell in love with James. Not because James saved her. Emma had saved herself by leaving David. But because James saw her. James believed in her. James treated her with the kind of respect and kindness that Emma had never experienced before. James didn't make Emma feel indebted to him. James didn't use his help as leverage. James didn't ask for anything in return except that Emma be honest with him. James asked for Emma's presence, not Emma's gratitude. James asked for Emma's genuine feelings, not Emma's performance. One night, Emma told James, "I'm afraid that one day you'll get tired of me. I'm afraid that you'll realize I'm damaged and leave me the way David left me." James looked at Emma and he said, "Emma, you're not damaged. You're someone who survived something terrible. That makes you strong, not broken. And I'm not going to leave you. But even if I did, even if tomorrow I decided I couldn't be with you anymore, you would be okay. You would survive. You would rebuild. Because you're capable of that. You've already proven it." And Emma understood that James loved her not because he needed to save her, but because he saw her value. James loved her for who she was becoming, not for who she had been. Meanwhile, David was falling apart. David spent the first month after abandoning Emma convincing himself that he didn't care. David told himself that Emma was weak. David told himself that Emma was ungrateful. David told himself that he was better off without her. But the lie wasn't working anymore. The lie was cracking. The lie was collapsing. David had lost his job. David's work had been suffering because David couldn't focus. David's boss had noticed that David's performance was declining. David had made critical mistakes. David had lost major accounts because of his carelessness. And when the company had to make cuts, David was first on the list. David lost his friends. David's friends had started to see the real David, the angry, bitter, resentful David. David's friends had seen how David treated people. David's friends had heard about what David had done to Emma. And one by one, David's friends had distanced themselves. His friend group, which had seemed so solid, dissolved completely. David was spiraling. David was drinking heavily. David was barely sleeping. David was alone in his apartment. The apartment that he had once shared with Emma, the apartment where Emma had tried so hard to make him happy. And David was completely, utterly alone. David would sometimes drive past the places where Emma and James went. David would watch them from a distance. David would see Emma smiling in a way he had never made her smile. David would see James looking at Emma with genuine affection and tenderness. David would see them holding hands and laughing and being present with each other in a way that David had never been present with Emma. And David felt something break inside him. David felt the weight of what he had done. David felt the magnitude of what he had destroyed. David finally went to therapy. David didn't go willingly at first. David's mother, tired of watching her son destroy himself, gave David an ultimatum. Either you get professional help or I'm cutting you off completely. I can't watch you self-destruct anymore. And so David went to therapy. David's therapist's name was Dr. Marcus. Dr. Marcus was a man in his 60s who had seen many men like David. Men who had built their identities on control and dominance and who were now facing the collapse of everything they thought made them powerful. In their first session, David told Dr. Marcus, "My wife left me. She ran off with some billionaire. I don't understand why she couldn't just stay and work on our marriage." Dr. Marcus asked, "How did your wife leave? What happened?" And David told the story. David told about the fight over the coat. David told about pulling over on the highway. David told about pushing Emma out of the car. David told about leaving her alone on the side of the road. Dr. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then Dr. Marcus asked, "David, what do you think you were trying to accomplish in that moment?" David said, "I was angry. I wanted her to understand that I was serious." Dr. Marcus said, "But what you actually did was abandon your wife on the side of the road at night. You made her feel unsafe. You made her feel unwanted. You made her feel like she was disposable to you." And David started to cry. For the first time in months, David cried. David understood in that moment what he had actually done. Dr. Marcus continued, "Your wife didn't leave you because of a coat or because of a billionaire. Your wife left you because you made her invisible. You told her she was worthless. You controlled her. You isolated her. You treated her like she was your property, not your partner. And eventually she realized that she deserved better." David nodded. David couldn't speak. David was overwhelmed by the realization of what he had done. Over the next few months, David finally started to understand that his behavior was his problem, not Emma's. David finally started to understand that he had been cruel to Emma because of his own insecurity and fear, not because Emma deserved cruelty. David finally started to understand that control and love are opposites, not companions. David wrote Emma a letter. David spent days writing it, revising it, trying to find the right words. David was terrified of what Emma would think. David was terrified that she would read the letter and throw it away without responding. But David had to try. David had to at least acknowledge what he had done. David wrote, "Dear Emma, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to respond to this letter. But I need you to know something. I see now what I couldn't see then. I was cruel to you. I made you invisible. I told you that you were worthless when the truth is that you were never the problem. I was the problem. My insecurity, my fear of being inadequate, my need to control everything, that was my problem. And I took it out on you. I punished you for my own failures. And I'm so deeply sorry." The letter went on. David explained his journey in therapy. David explained that he was finally starting to understand himself. David explained that he wanted Emma to know that none of it was her fault. David ended with, "You don't have to forgive me. You don't have to respond to this letter. But I want you to know that I see now what I couldn't see then. I see that you were never the problem. I was the problem. And I'm sorry." Emma received the letter. Emma recognized David's handwriting on the envelope. Emma's first instinct was to throw it away. Emma's first instinct was to not read it. But Emma read it. Emma read every word. Emma felt sadness wash over her. Emma felt sadness for the woman she used to be, the woman who would have desperately wanted to receive this letter, the woman who would have taken it as permission to go back to David, the woman who would have believed that David's apology meant he was changing. But Emma was not that woman anymore. Emma was strong now. Emma was whole now. Emma was loved by someone who actually saw her. Emma had spent 6 months building a life where she was valued, where she was respected, where she was treated like a human being instead of an accessory. Emma showed the letter to James. Emma needed to share this moment with him. Emma needed his perspective. James read the letter slowly. James read it multiple times. James put the letter down and he looked at Emma. James said, "How do you feel?" And Emma said, "I feel sad for him. I feel like he's finally understanding something that I needed him to understand when we were together. But I also feel relieved. I feel relieved that he finally sees it wasn't my fault. I feel relieved that he's taking responsibility." James said, "What do you want to do?" And Emma said, "I want to move forward. I want to let him have his journey, but I'm not part of it anymore. I forgive him because holding on to anger only hurts me. But I can't be with him. I've learned that I deserve better, and I've found that with you." Emma wrote a response to David. Emma took time with it. Emma wanted to be honest but also kind. Emma wrote, "David, thank you for your letter. I appreciate that you're doing the work to understand yourself. I appreciate that you're taking responsibility for your actions. And I forgive you because holding on to anger only hurts me. But I can't be with you. I've learned that I deserve to be seen, to be valued, to be treated with respect. I've learned that I deserve better. And I've found that with someone else. I wish you well as you continue to heal. I hope that someday you become the kind of man who sees the people he loves. I hope that someday you understand that love isn't about control. But that person will never be me. I've moved on. And I'm at peace with that. I wish you peace too." Emma sealed the letter. Emma sent it. And with that, Emma closed a chapter. So here's what I want you to understand about Emma's story, and I need you to really hear this. Emma was invisible in her marriage because she allowed herself to be invisible. Emma didn't disappear overnight. Emma slowly, gradually, step by step, accepted David's version of her worth. Emma accepted his insults. Emma accepted his control. Emma accepted his cruelty. And in accepting all of that, Emma erased herself. But invisibility isn't permanent. Invisibility isn't a life sentence. Invisibility can be reversed. Visibility can be reclaimed. And all it takes is one person, or sometimes one moment, to help you see yourself the way you should have been seeing yourself all along. For Emma, that person was James. But James didn't see Emma because he was a billionaire. James didn't save Emma because he had money. James saw Emma because he was paying attention. James saw Emma because he treated her like a human being. James saw Emma because when she was broken on the side of the road, he chose to stop and help instead of driving past. And that's available to everyone. That's available right now, in this moment. If you are invisible, if you are not being seen by the person who promised to see you forever, then you need to understand something. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to be loved by someone who actually sees you. And that person might be waiting for you to have the courage to become visible again. Now let's talk about David. Because David's story is also important. David had to lose Emma to understand what he had taken for granted. David had to watch Emma be happy with someone else to understand that she was valuable. David had to lose control to understand that love isn't about control. And David's redemption is also important. David didn't become perfect. David didn't suddenly become a great person because he went to therapy. But David became aware. David became conscious. David started to understand the impact of his actions. David started to take responsibility. This is what real change looks like. Real change isn't about becoming perfect. Real change is about becoming aware. Real change is about taking responsibility for your actions. Real change is about understanding that other people have their own worth, their own value, their own right to be seen and respected. If you are like David, if you've been taking someone for granted, if you've been making someone invisible, if you've been cruel to the person who chose to love you, understand this. It's not too late to change. It's not too late to see the person in front of you. It's not too late to understand that love isn't about possession or control. But the longer you wait, the more likely it is that they will find someone who sees them the way you should have all along. This story is about visibility and invisibility. This story is about the difference between being with someone and being seen by someone. This story is about what happens when you finally realize, too late, what you had. But it's also about something else. It's about the fact that invisibility doesn't have to be permanent. It's about the fact that you can reclaim your visibility. It's about the fact that you can find someone who sees you. Emma found visibility with James. David found understanding through loss. Both of them learned what should have been obvious all along. That seeing someone, truly seeing them, is the greatest gift you can give. And that gift is available to you right now. That gift is available in this moment. If you are invisible, become visible. Claim your space. Demand to be seen. And if you see someone who is invisible, stop. See them. Really see them. Because that moment of being truly seen, might just change their entire life. I'll see you next time.